Maybe the most shocking news I have ever heard when it comes to sports happened last night when I found out that Andrew Luck was going to retire. I mean, this guy was probably the most hyped up prospect coming out of the draft ever, and he did have some very good seasons with the Colts. And he was just starting to get better. He had finally recovered from his last injury, and he was seemingly going to have another potentially 10 years to play. So yeah, I mean, him pulling a Calvin Johnson and retiring at 29 is crazy, especially considering he's a quarterback, and quarterbacks tend to play a lot longer than other positions. So of course, this video will be about Jacoby Brissett being the new Colts starter. However, I do kind of just want to talk about Andrew Luck for a second, so I will be doing that. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I tend to be pretty players friendly. I say, listen, if you want to retire, no shame in retiring. He had already made money being in the NFL. He didn't want to continue to risk his health, which is really the reason why he was retiring. And so as a neutral observer, I can sit here and say, you know what, I don't blame you. I know it's a tough situation, but if you'd rather retire, that's totally understandable. However, if I'm a Colts fan, I would be livid. Like, I would be very disappointed if I was a Colts fan, no doubt about it. I know a lot of people were giving the Colts fans heat for booing Andrew Luck. However, I personally don't really blame them that much either. And I know that'll be a controversial take, but I've never been one to not give controversial takes if it's what I feel. But I mean, my mindset is basically, if Andrew Luck did retire at the beginning of the offseason, or if he said, you know what, I'll play one more year and then retire, well then I think the fans would say, okay, that's disappointing, but fine. However, retiring at this point really does kind of back the Colts into a hole where they have to have Jacoby Brissett be their starter next year. They didn't have the opportunity to potentially sign a Nick Foles or trade for a Joe Flacco. They could have drafted Drew Lock or Will Grier or even Jarrett Stidham, who I am very high on. Not to mention, they could have maybe even traded up in the draft to try to get Dwayne Haskins or something. Again, I'm not blaming Luck. You have to do what makes you happy. But at the same time, I do understand the frustration of the Colts fans. I mean, the cheapest season tickets are like $500. Imagine if you spent $500 or $1,000 to get season tickets and then you find out that your star quarterback isn't going to be playing. You're telling me that you're going to say, oh, that's fine, do what makes you happy? No, of course not. You're going to be very sad, or for some people, very angry. Again, if in a year from now you're still mad at Andrew Luck, well then, okay, there might be some problems there. However, immediately after he retires, him getting booed, to me, that's kind of expected. I mean, if you're Andrew Luck and you're retiring 2 weeks before the season starts, you have to kind of know going in, okay, some fans will probably be annoyed. Andrew Luck doesn't owe the Colts anything, and I do think the bright spot for the Colts is just the fact that they do have a pretty good backup in Jacoby Brissett, and also just they have a pretty good team. So it's definitely far from a disaster by any means. I actually don't think Jacoby Brissett will be terrible in this Colts offense next year, but that's looking at things from a very rational, non-biased mindset. Fans are definitely not going to be rational, some are going to be upset. So yeah, that's kind of my take on the whole Andrew Luck getting booed and Andrew Luck retiring in the first place. I think he wanted to try to find a better way to go out. I don't think this is the way he wanted to go out, so I do feel bad for him in that sense. He was kind of blindsided in a way. It's just a tough situation, and this is the dark side of football in a lot of ways, the side that a lot of us don't want to admit. It's a physical sport, and it takes its toll on your body, and I'm never going to blame someone for wanting to bow out after injuries. So I do wish him the best, but now let's just move on to the actual point of this video, which is going to be, can Jacoby Brissett step into that role and still be a successful starter? Because while I do think kind of the mindset is, man, the Colts are screwed now, the Colts are going to get the first overall pick once again, right? And honestly, I don't fully think that's the case. I don't think the Colts are screwed. I mean, for one thing, they're definitely a much better team now than they were 2 years ago when Brissett was their starter for the full season. But also, they weren't even the worst team in the league that year, so I definitely think they won't be the worst team in the league. But then the question remains, could they be a playoff team? Could this still be a successful team? And I think there is a chance. I definitely don't think that they're screwed. For one thing, I think they're just a good football team. I really do. They have a lot of talent surrounding Brissett. But I also think one real reason why they won't be screwed about having Andrew Luck is simply just because of the system the Colts run. It's very similar to that Josh McDaniels New England Patriots system, where it's definitely a type of system that doesn't require a lot of deep passes and a lot of really athletic plays from a quarterback. Now, of course, Luck could still go above and beyond and make those athletic plays, but it doesn't necessarily require that. It kind of requires you to be more of a game manager. So while Brissett definitely doesn't have the natural talent that Luck does, he can still be an effective quarterback in this system. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Let's take a look at this play. It's going to be a cover one linebacker blitz, and what the Colts are going to do is have the tight end run that route right there, and they'll have the number 2 receiver kind of run underneath him. It's man coverage, but the tight end will clear out the first defender in that area, and then their number 2 receiver could potentially get open since it is a route with a quick cut, and against the cover one linebacker blitz, that's what you want. And as you see, once this ball is snapped and the play develops, I mean, Brissett's receiver is definitely open here. But there's also one reason I'm really bringing this play up, and it's because this is a 3rd down and 12 situation. So most of the time, this decision is a no-brainer. You have a receiver which will at least get 5 yards, potentially even a first down. But now on a 3rd down and 12, you kind of want to put yourself in a situation where you can pick up as many yards as possible. However, for Brissett, he's going to take this opportunity and make a throw in that direction, and his receiver does end up picking up the first down. Personally, that's the decision you have to make, and it's not actually an easy decision to make. A lot lot of times on a 3rd down and 12, it's very tempting to wait for a receiver to get open past the 1st down marker and then try to make that throw. But Brissett knows it's all a percentage game. It's all about giving your players the best chance to make a play. Yes, there's a chance that there's going to be a tackle and you don't get the 1st down on that play, but there's also a very real chance that you do get the 1st down on that play. Not to mention if you pick up 5 or 6 yards, well then at least you're in field goal range and can kick a field goal. It's not easy for a young player to make those types of plays. I mean, keep in mind, Brissett is 24 as of this play. I mean, right now he's 26, but back when he was a starter, he was 24. He's a young player, and sometimes being a young backup, you don't really get too much opportunities to improve. So luckily for Brissett, he will now get a 2nd full season to be a starter. That could give him the playing time he needs to be a potential starting level quarterback. I made my top 40 quarterback rankings list this past offseason, and he was actually number 41. I was about to have him on the list, but I had him just shy of RG3. But honestly, you could have made an argument for him to be on that list. You could have made an argument for him to be higher up on that list. I mean, he has had some good plays. And I definitely think he'll be especially effective in this Colts offense, which requires a lot of short to medium range throws. Like watch, here's another one. This time it's going to be a cover 1 hole, and the Colts have a receiver running that route right there. So just looking at it on paper, this route could get open, but it is going to take a little bit of time for it to develop. His receiver will basically just have to get past the hash marks before Brissett can really try to make a throw and try to make this play. And also his receiver will have to win his 1-on-1 matchup, but it's definitely something Brissett can look to. And as you'll see once this ball is snapped and once the play develops, his receiver isn't really getting ready to cut just yet. He's now getting ready to try to get past the linebacker who's right over there. But if you look at Brissett, he's ready to make this throw. He's going to try to time this one perfectly. He wants to hit that receiver the second he gets past the linebacker in the middle of the field, and that's exactly what he's going to do. It's a perfectly timed throw and also just a really accurate throw, and that's what led to a 1st down. Very good play from Brissett. One more type of play that I like from Brissett is this one, where it's going to be a cover 3 zone, and to have a receiver running that route right there. But really the key thing to watch here isn't actually going to be the route itself, because as you see, the route's going to go straight into a gap in coverage, so you think, okay, not a great route. However, look at the Cardinal who's going to be playing zone coverage in that zone. He's actually playing press coverage right now, trying to sell that as man coverage, but this now actually is a great situation for the Colts, as a receiver could potentially get open. I mean, just because you are in somebody else's attended zone doesn't necessarily mean that you won't get open, because it's still a 1-on-1 matchup in those situations. And I mean, as you see right when the ball is snapped, his receiver is definitely open here. So Brissett makes a great throw and able to pick up some yards there. Are these throws highlight reel level throws? Well, not really. I mean, maybe that second one was really good. But the 1st one and the 3rd one were definitely not necessarily easy plays to make, but they were kind of mundane plays to make. It's the type of plays you expect the quarterback to make 9 times out of 10, but Brissett can make those 9 out of 10 times. Brissett can make those solid throws, and that's a lot of what being a quarterback is. A lot of what being a quarterback is just making decent throws. I think my biggest worry about Brissett going into this 2019 season will just simply be the fact that I don't think he's going to win you a ton of games, but I think he can do his part, and with a good Colts team, they can still find ways to win games. Although when talking about Brissett, there are a couple things that I am worried about when it comes to him. And when I say worried, this doesn't necessarily mean that I think they're negatives, they're just things that were negatives last time we saw him. These are mental mistakes that he made as a 24-year-old player, which most 24-year-old quarterbacks make mental mistakes. He's 26 now, he's been in the league for a couple more years, he had a chance to sit and watch Andrew Luck play, maybe he could be better. But he did make some mistakes his year as a starter with the Colts, and this one was one of them. Basically what I want you to take a look at on this play will be those 2 Cleveland Browns and those 2 Colts right that I have circled right there. This is man coverage for Cleveland, but the way it's going to work actually is that if those 2 Colts are blocking, then both of those 2 Cleveland Browns players will then try to rush the passer or try to stop a run, depending on if it's a run or pass, obviously. But of course, if they're running a route, then you're supposed to follow them and make sure that they don't get wide open. And once the ball is snapped, if you notice, that Colt is definitely looking like he's getting ready to block. So because of that, the Brown who's in charge of covering him is actually going to try to rush the passer and try to get the Brissett here. And so since that happens, now that receiver can easily just run out to the flat, and he's wide open here. There's no Brown anywhere near him. I mean, this is a 30-yard play at least, potentially even a touchdown if you could just break one tackle. However, if you look at Brissett, he just doesn't notice him here. He's looking at that Colt who's downfield, which in fairness was the Colt that he should have looked at on this play. That was his first read on this one. He didn't know that a tight end was going to end up getting wide open. He wasn't aware of that. I mean, you can't really blame him. That's kind of a tough thing to realize, that in the middle of a play, a receiver just happens to get completely wide open. It happens, but it's rare. And as you notice, there is a lot of Cleveland Browns getting ready to try to make a tackle here, and Jacoby Brissett just isn't going to realize he has a receiver open in time, and he gets sacked. You definitely hate to see a sack when there was blown coverage for sure. I mean, that could have been a ton of yards, but just Brissett, he didn't pick it up. Again, I'm not blaming Brissett for that one. I mean, that's a tough play to make, but at the same time, that's the play that Andrew Luck makes 10 out of 10 times. I mean, that's what kind of made him so great, was his field vision. So that's kind of the drop off in play from Luck to Brissett, is plays like that. Brissett can often do what's asked of him, but Luck would often do above and beyond what's asked of him. He was a 24-year-old player, and oftentimes he played like a 24-year-old player. And this one was another example of that. It's going to be a cover 4 zone, and those will be the routes that the Colts receivers will be running. And so, there's several routes that could get open here, but for Brissett, he should know that he has a check down right there. That's the worst case scenario route to throw to here. And especially in cover 4 zone, a check down is just not a bad play just because there's only 3 defenders who are close to you. And after this ball is snapped, his check down is going to be open, so there's a guaranteed several yards on this play. And now, typically, again, this is kind of one of those situations where it should be a no-brainer. You hit the check down, you pick up 5 to 7 yards, and then you live to see another down. But the reason why you might be more hesitant to do this is simply because this is actually a 3rd down and 16 situation as opposed to a 3rd down and 5 situation. So while sometimes this would be an obvious throw to make, in this situation it becomes a lot less obvious. Brissett is going to look downfield and try to see if something else is open, which is what he should do. He should be doing that. However, if you look right over there, there's a Jaguar who's just about to get free and try to get to Brissett. So at this point, he should be saying, you know what, I'm not going to have time to make anything deep. I'll take some yards. Maybe my receiver can break a tackle and get the first down, but at the very least, we're moving the ball down the field and playing the field position game. However, once the pressure does get free, he tries to instead try to get out of the pressure, try to get around the pocket, and try to get something else going, and he ends up getting sacked. I know that might seem like nothing, but if you get sacked and lose 7 yards, as opposed to making a throw where you gain 7 yards, that's a 14-yard difference on that play. The first down was already off the table, however, he didn't want to admit that, and that's what kind of led to him getting sacked and then losing some yards on that play. Far from a disaster, totally understandable, especially for a 24-year-old, but he's in a tough situation now where he's going to have to try to find a way to fill the shoes of Andrew Luck. That's not going to be easy to do. Luck was a top 10 quarterback, retiring right when he gets to his prime. That's very shocking. The results of this play that I didn't love from Brissett, it's going to be a cover 3 zone, and to have a receiver running right there, which, it could get open. There definitely is a moment in this route where it could get into a gap in coverage, and so Brissett is going to look there. But of course, situational football is important too. There's 44 seconds left in the half, so Brissett, don't do anything stupid. You want to get points on the board. And you also do have 2 timeouts left. So 44 seconds left, 2 timeouts. You don't have to take chances, and you are in field goal range, so you want to make sure you at least get points on the board here. But again, a good route on paper, so definitely something he should look to throw to. And as you see, once the ball is snapped, his receiver is going to get relatively open. Granted, worth mentioning, this is a cover 3, meaning that there is going to be a single safety who is deep, who could potentially run under and try to intercept this ball if Brissett were to put too much air under it. So he can't just lob one up there. He does have to kind of throw this one on a line. And so that's what he's going to do, but his throw just isn't a great one, honestly. He didn't time this one too well, and the throw was just too low, and it results in an interception. So, that's kind of who I feel like Jacoby Brissett is as a player. He's very young, but definitely has potential to at least be a decent starter, especially in this system. But that's my opinion. I'd like to know what you guys think, and as always, thanks for watching.